So I figured in order to start, this is a music channel after all, although we talk about acting and all this other stuff, I thought it would be really fun to watch the Dawntrail trailer together, since I know you've both seen it, but we can talk a little bit about the music and soak in, and yeah, let's dive into it.
Blue seas, clear skies, and boundless possibilities. I dare say our destination will soon be in sight.
Enjoying yourself for a change?
There's no cause for panic. This one might make for a worthy opponent.
Might you have a moment to speak further?
Look, my friends. Behold the scene of our next great adventure.
You and your adventures. I trust you have not forgotten the true purpose of our voyage?
At last we are come to the land you call the New World. My home. Tural.
So cool.
My goodness, the production value is just gone higher and higher. Not only that, but like you really get the sense that it's the start of a new adventure. It's a sort of celebratory thing, right? It's crazy. How does it feel to you? I mean, like you see that's like, 10 years after the beginning of this thing, especially having like a role that you've both sort of embodied now for years and years and years. Like that changes you, you know what I mean? Like what's the perspective after this much time and after seeing something like that, which is so bright and exuberant?
It made me feel really emotional. I've seen it before. I don't know what it is about today, but I just felt really emotional just then watching it because it reminds you that we're like this bigger part of it. I know that the twins are a huge part of it, but you watch that level. I mean, it's so cinematic. Yeah. And everyone that has been part of that game has been doing it for decades, not just us, And I was really struck by that just then listening to the vocals and the music and the visuals and you see new things in it every time, don't you? But it's epic, absolutely epic. And we know, because we're all voice actors, with the last kind of piece of the puzzle. It's a good reminder when you watch something like that we're like a drop in the ocean.
It wasn't quite the full trailer, but we first saw it at FanFest in London. That was wild because, I mean, however many people were there, we were in and amongst all those people watching the first trailer for the first time. I've never felt anything like that. That was crazy. Everyone was so excited. The atmosphere in the room was just charged with excitement when different characters kept popping up. Massive cheers. I mean, I'm sure you can see like the reaction online, can't you? I remember looking at you, Beth, and we were both just stunned by that reaction. And to think that we're part of that, I mean, it's incredible.
So few actors get to be a part of something this big. It still shocks me. Like when we watch it, I'm like, I can't believe that's us. It's mad.
I know. We're still not used to it, are we? Because it's only like in the past few years that we've kind of really joined the community and kind of like really put ourselves out there. And so we hear firsthand about how important the game is to so many people.
Well, it is crazy just how long it's been going on. I'm in a game that hasn't been announced yet, and we've done like 5-6 sessions, and it's much smaller scale, obviously, to Final Fantasy XIV. But every time I go in there in the booth, I always feel like I'm also trying to uncover, they do the playback. So you're like, remember the voice placement, the voice print? And it's funny because you do start to sort of feel a sense of not only ownership, but also a sense of like, okay, what did I do last time? How can I tweak this? How can I make it better? For me to think for you all, like, I mean, it's crazy. Not only that, but also the arcs that each of your individual characters go through. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, like, you don't really know where the arc is going to go when you get into the booth for the first 4-hour session of a new expansion or whatever. I mean, like, you don't know, right? You're just sort of like, here's the new lines, right?
We have no idea. Right. No idea. We still don't know when we come out.
I mean, we are kind of the last to know, really.
Yeah.
And we are discovering things in the booth as we record. Very early on, like we wouldn't receive a full script. We'd just get our lines. Sometimes on the day, a lot of the times it's a kind of cold read.
On the spreadsheet, right? And you just go through it.
Yeah, and so you don't get any context as well. Gradually over the years, they have kind of given us more information. And also now that we can there's so much on YouTube to kind of do our research and as best we can. But that's what's so incredible about the game. It's so vast and so lore heavy. For sure, the people who play the game, they know the story, our characters much better than we ever will. Because you guys, you spend like hundreds of hours invested in these characters.
You've got to trust yourself in the booth, haven't you? Because there have been moments, and time is money. Studio time is not cheap. So we know that we're there and we've been called upon to do that job. And that's how I see it sometimes. If I feel a bit sort of, and I did in the early days, I look back now and I think, gosh, I was so nervous. Like I don't feel nervous anymore. But I used to go in and I'd be like shaking, and I had to really talk to myself and think, they cast me for a reason. I may not know how to do it, but the only way to learn is to start doing it, you know? And I remember thinking, stop overthinking it and trust the lines and trust the text. And thankfully the writing is amazing, which really helps us. So that largely does it for you if you jump into it. But it's challenging because sometimes we do one. I mean, you know this, Marco. You do one take, and sometimes they go, "Great, move on," and you're
like, "Are you sure?
Just do 5 more, please." Yeah, it's challenging, and sometimes you fall down a rabbit hole of getting a pronunciation wrong, or something goes wrong, and you end up doing it 10 times and you're dying inside thinking, oh no, why did they cast me?
It's a funny thing, you know, in my opera days, like the director really, like, we were meant to get out of the way and like be the singer, and then the director would position us. And so, but it's interesting that in the booth or even I think really in regular theater, I suppose, a director will guide the process rather than just telling you where to go. And it's so interesting to have to essentially be critiqued into how to do better. No, it's not contemplative enough. It's not you're not lilting enough. Try it like this. You're really trying to get her to like understand something. So it's so interesting how voiceover as an acting, I think, as a career is really just about taking direction really well and hopefully booking an audition and booking a job, which is also like the next biggest hurdle ever, right?
I think lots of people think acting's about showing and putting stuff out there, and throwing stuff out there. And actually, I don't know what you're like, Colin, but so often the note I get in the booth is just listen more, you know, allow there to be a little bit more space, or think less. Don't try and overthink it. Just go with your first instinct. I've learned a lot through this game actually about acting and about what works and what is more believable. And often the note I get is do less, just breathe and do less. And that's where the truth is, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that, because I think actors in general, we have a tendency to overthink things. And for me in the booth, it's much easier when kind of access that kind of flow state where you are just in the moment and trusting your instincts as well. Because we have been with the characters for so long, there is a degree of a kind of instinct that takes over as well. Even though, you know, we don't know the intricacies of the ins and outs of storyline, we still have a kind of feeling for these characters. And so increasingly we're able to kind of call on that, aren't we?
In the grand scheme of things, it's a small but like incredibly important part of the process. So do you feel like a sense of ownership for those characters? Like when you watch it, you're like, that's me. And on top of that, the text can be very verbose and very Shakespearean, and it's lilt and thing. Sometimes it almost feels like an audio drama. I don't know if you feel this way too, but when I played, I'm like, oh, it's like an audio drama. How do you navigate, I guess, both having ownership of a character and then also dealing with the intricacies and the difficulties that come with the text like that? I'm assuming that, I don't know if you're Shakespearean trained or not, but I just assume you're British, so you are, but I don't know.
We've both done Shakespeare, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah, we have. I think a lot of the tradition of British acting training is in the theatre. We do a lot of classical text, a lot of Shakespeare, which I think really lends itself well to the style of writing that 14 is written in, especially with characters like Urianger and
of course, yeah,
Tancred as well. And similarly with classical text and 14, there can be some quite long and intricate thoughts. And so being able to kind of navigate your way through that in a kind of coherent way, it's definitely helped having that training in verse in classical text.
I love Shakespeare. It's like my heartbeat as an actor. And when people ask me the role that I would like to play, it's always some sort of Shakespearean role. When I was training in drama school, there were instantly actors who they just excelled at modern text. And people used to say that to me about classical. They said, you just suit it. It suits you and you clearly love it. When it comes to relating that to my work as Alisaie, I think Colin's right. Like my training ground with Shakespeare really was at the Globe. Of course, it's outdoors and it's nigh on in the round, and you have people, you know, right down by your toes, and people up there and people behind you and people in seats. It's a really intense, steep learning curve working somewhere like that, because there's no lights to hide behind. It is raw. Like you
in the round,
and you need to know what you're doing. But now thinking about taking that into the booth, I think Colin's right. I think it's breath control. Thinking about this game, we do loads of work with vowels. Like vowels are really important. Using, I mean, you know this, Marco, as a singer as well, being able to use a vowel well and elongate it and stretch it out to your advantage to lean into a particular word is really helpful. And some of the stuff that we do at the end of sessions, when we do all the big kind of fighty stuff, all the big elongated vowels we need that training behind us, you know, and and finding the contrasts, within the text, the kind of black and white, light and dark, all that stuff is so Shakespearean. And that sort of antithesis, we need that in the game as much as we do if we were both to go on and play the Macbeths this evening, or in Hamlet this evening. Right. So it's just in a different context, but you can still use the same skill. And you don't think about it. I don't think, I'm being a little bit Shakespearean here. You don't think it's in you. It's in your bone.
It's funny because when I started voiceover, I sort of just was like, it was one of these things where my last gig was in France and I just sort of sat down and I was like, you know what, I want to start voiceover. And I took a couple classes and I was like, I've had 10 years of opera. How hard can it be? No, it's so much harder to find that internal voice and how to use the technique. I think a lot of people are very prone to critique and criticism of voiceover and voice actors, but in acting in general, but they don't actually know the technique and the skill that goes into creating these things that are, and they don't even think about the fact that half the time you're just auditioning and that's the job. You're lucky if you book and that's your work. The whole thing is just such a fascinating thing. With characters that you've been with for so long, are there certain arcs that have stood out to you that have really meant a lot to you, both in the booth and then also sort of witnessing them outside of the space?
I mean, for me, I find it hard to recall
because there's so many.
What has stuck with me is hearing how much it has helped other people, especially with Endwalker. I do remember being moved by some of the text, but I haven't kind of hung on to what those instances were. But hearing, going to conventions and things and kind of hearing firsthand what the game has meant to people and the awful experiences that people have gone through and which the game has helped them through, that really touches me, and it's not something that I take for granted at all. And to be able to be a part of someone's life in that way that has helped them in a positive way, I think that's a really awesome thing to be a part of.
I've definitely had moments. I think the confidence that we're getting in studio now, I would say we're in our kind of 9th year, heading towards 10th year. I've noticed there have been moments in studio, without ruining anything for anyone, obviously, which have felt a lot more real than they had in previous years. And I think that's to do with maturity as actors. I think a lot has happened for both of us in the last, in our lives. A huge amount has happened, actually, personally, for both of us in our lives. And I think you carry that with you. You know this, Marco. You carry it with you, even when you're singing, you carry it with you into studio. And you're absolutely right, Colin. We are now meeting people who come to us and they say, obviously, they know that we don't play the game at the moment. We haven't done so far, but people come to us and they say, do you remember this line? Of course, when they say it, I'm like, I do remember it. And there are beginning to be moments where you'll say a line and there's this kind of lull in the studio, but it's such a full, rich silence because everyone's just taking a breath, because I think we're beginning to realize really the gravity of some of these lines. And that's what I mean about good direction. When you get good direction and they push you that much further, because they know what we've got in us. Talk about Shakespeare, they know what we've got inside of us. So I've definitely had moments like that. They really spur you on when you meet people, and you see comments and stuff online of people saying that you don't know what you've done for me, actually. And we know, we're actors, we're aware that it's the character. It's really the character's story and their arcs. And Ali and Alfie are so very different in many ways. And often people come to us at cons, don't they? And they're like, Beth, I'm so sorry, but Alfie, Colin, and I'm like, don't apologize. Your story's your story. And for some reason, Alphinaud's touched them, or Alisai's stories touched them in a different way. So we're just learning that. And I think we're being more courageous in studio with how far we're taking things. And I'm game for that now, because I know that they'll tell us when to stop if it's too much. So I think, we have had some really, really poignant moments. Some of mine are right at the start. I've talked about this a little bit before. Really, really, really early days when I had sort of big dialogue about Louis Soir and her relationship with her grandfather and all of that stuff. And some of those speeches, there were moments I thought, okay, wow, this is really significant. And taking a breath when you're you talk about seeing the lines technically, and obviously lots of video game lines are one-offs, but when you have a big chunk like that, it's a big thing. But the stuff more recently, I won't ruin it for anyone, but some of the stuff with the twins more recently, we know what that is doing to people. Even though we're not together, in the booth, we're now carrying a bit of each other into those lines, and I think we're beginning to realize what this really means to people long term.
Well, it seems like you also have been spending a lot more time together, and you obviously have like a natural chemistry as the sort of sibling friendship relationship that I think also helps when you step into the booth and you don't necessarily like, you don't have your partner there, but you can, it's such an odd thing, because it's so much more fun in some ways to play off of somebody. But when the two of you especially, I feel like for a long time, the cast of Final Fantasy XIV was not doing like marketing tours or going to things, and it's been really nice. And I guess since Endwalker, really there's been an increase in like folks like like that really fun cake decorating the cake video, like stuff like that I've noticed that like in just like going out and about
cake making that we did.
Yeah, I love that video. But but even just being able, going to KupoCon or going to just getting out there, I feel like it's high time that you also, both of you, get to reap the benefit, the rewards of the hard work. I'd played I've got to spend, I think it's like 500 hours, some ridiculous amount. When I wasn't gigging, I was just playing video games. And then the pandemic happened, and then I was like, okay, I have a lot of time. But so when my dad passed 2 years ago, and it was Endwalker was that like a couple months after, so it was like the grief was very raw and very fresh for me. And man, I mean, the amount of the crying that I did, which I don't cry at video games ever, like it's just not something I've ever done. But yeah, like the Endwalker stuff was just so personal. There was no like pretense around it, which I think really like was what made it so naturally easy to be emotional about. You know what I mean? Because obviously we don't live in that world. We understand that it's fictional, and yet the reality of the situation was so genuine. It was very easy. It was a very cathartic. I think listening to Flo and like playing Endwalker was actually an extremely cathartic experience for me. So I guess thank you. This is my story about your characters.
Marco, I've seen you sing Flo, and it made me so.
You watched that? Oh,
it was really, 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 really beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
It really touched me, because I think if you are willing, and there are other people in your position who've spoken out about personal things, other video game actors and people that we know who've been willing to share a bit of that. And I think you doing that facilitates other people to stop pretending that they're okay all the time. And I just found, I love that you did it through music, but you didn't just sing the song, you spoke about your experience with your father. And I just thought it was so powerful. And I think the more we do this, Colin and I talk about this all the time, the more we drop the mask and the more we are our real selves, and we share our grief and we share our joy with people, the more it normalizes pain. And I think we can bring our pain into our work. All three of us will have been through stuff that we've spoken of and some that we haven't. That's where the power in this job comes in, is we can use that as a tool. We can use this medium as a tool to share a bit of that and say, look, we can be honest and open about these things. And I thought it was really powerful, Marco. Well,
that's sweet of you. Thank you. It's so funny. I think there's a big divide. We're about to dive in deep here. There's a big divide for an audience versus a performer, where our job on stage and in a voiceover booth or wherever is about relaying emotion and you're right, tearing that wall down so that people can feel and can relate. I mean, no one can relate to a 400-year-old opera. And yet, if we allow that sort of vulnerability to come down, you can, I think anybody that really loves what they do and has a passion for acting, and ultimately that's really what this is. It's like expressing emotion and expressing the human condition. It doesn't matter what packaging you put on it. That's what we do, It
is a powerful thing, because I think it can help stories in general. They can help people work out how they feel about things going on in their own lives. It can help people articulate their own thoughts. I mean, art in general, drama, has this capacity to be very therapeutic. And as much as the game has helped other people. So I lost my brother a few years ago. Worst time in my life, but I was really struck by just how supportive the Final Fantasy community was during that time. I mean, they helped financially, because my brother, he was in Thailand, and they helped pay for medical bills. But then also what really touched me was all the messages, receiving so many messages from people, and lots of quotes as well, lots of Alphinaud quotes. Which was really, really touching, about finding strength in the darkness and keeping on, basically. And yeah, that really did help during that horrible time.
It's hard, right? Because unless you've lived it in one way or another, grief takes all of us by surprise, and grief is something that is a lived experience and is a known experience. But the problem is that as a society, like before my dad died, I would have said, that sucks, I'm sorry to hear that. But because my dad died, I completely understand that sensation of that grief is it's a type of pain that you don't really know until you know, and you will know it, and that's an inevitability. But it really changes how you perceive life, and as performers, it sort of brings you're right, Beth, when you say take the mask off, because ultimately that's the rub. It's a very interesting thing to live with grief and to navigate as performers too with grief, and how that this is very the heart channel sort of opens up and it leaves. I don't know. It's just, I've thought a lot about this.
Do you know what's so interesting is our greatest fear as actors? People say to me sometimes, they say, oh, you're a professional pretender. You lie as your profession. And I find it, I understand why people say that, but I find it frustrating because I teach acting now sometimes to younger ones, and it's such a privilege explaining to them the process and how, of course, there's many, many different ways to learn to act. But actually what we do is that we are willing to actually tear ourselves open a little bit and share some of the, and of course, it's not just grief. It's polarized, isn't it? There's so much in acting. We can use these, turn our sorrow into strength. We can use these things as a blessing in our career as and when we're ready. And I think the beautiful thing is it's your choice when you're ready and how much of yourself you are willing to give, because it is a profession and it is our job. And I think we have to guard we are getting deep. We have to guard our hearts. We have to guard our hearts. But I think it's a powerful thing. And as a woman, my experience is different. I think about, I've had my 2 children since I started this job, and my experience with them in terms of motherhood, and I've got life experience now that I didn't have then. So I just think it's amazing that actually when life throws you these trials, it gives you perseverance that you've never had before. And I think it can shift gear into character, and you can use it, in your job. It's powerful.
Well, even just even if the character is optimistic, or I played this character in Genshin Impact named Dvorak, who was a musician. He was a very warm sort of person that enjoyed talking about the magic of music and how which is funny because that's what I accidentally ended up doing for a living, but that was really fun because it's a very vulnerable topic of discussion, talking about music and talking about how the arts move us, and I think reminding oneself of why they have landed in the sort of field that they've landed in is always a really helpful reminder. But it's just crazy to me that even looking at the character arcs for both of these characters and how both of you obviously have had your own personal life ups and downs, and seeing how much both characters have sort of matured with you as well as with people. So it's just an incredibly, I think that's a very human element that I think that's probably why people attach themselves so much to it, because it's very, I think, honest and very real,
Yeah. And also I think because the game has been going on for so long, people have literally grown up with these characters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what struck me talking to someone at some convention, I can't remember which one, but yeah, just how they started the game when they were literally children and now are adults. That is kind of wild. And so yeah, these characters have been kind of friends that they have grown up with over the years, which is kind of incredible. And also because it is such a unique thing that we're a part of, because getting to play a character so long.
Oh, it's so crazy.
It's such a gift. They are so kind of fleshed out and so detailed. They're not like a stock character, so they have really developed and changed as they have grown and as they have experienced all these different things throughout the expansions, which is pretty magical.
I mean, that's such a dream to have a role that you it's funny because you never quite know when it will end, but the fact that it's been going on for so long, it's just crazy because it's such an active part of your identity at this point. I feel I assume, right? Because it's crazy. I mean, we're lucky if we get to do a recurring role twice, let alone for 9 years.
We were laughing, weren't we, the other day about when we had the email from our agent going, oh, hey, and I looked at mine the other day and it was so casual. It was like, hey Beth, great news, you got it. Are you available on the 28th of July? It was just like, no, because of course they didn't know. It wasn't like, oh, hey, you're going to be in this game for potentially, 10 years.
Yeah.
No, nobody knew. Nobody. And I don't even think necessarily the creators knew, because of course they just had to see how it went, Right. So it's just been a mad journey, because perhaps if we knew, we might have felt the pressure too much. It was kind of nice. We're just like winging it month after month, and we just go in and we do our best in studio, and that is all we can ever do. And we have absolutely no idea what's coming. People think we know stuff. We don't really know much. So we know a bit, but not loads. So we're literally just counting our blessings and taking it month by month.
Yeah. Do you have time for a couple questions? Community questions? All right. Yeah. There's only a couple. I like this one. Is it fun?
Is it fun? Yeah. As in like the actual recording in the booth.
I'm pretty sure this person had never played this game, but they just wanted to participate. Is it fun doing your job?
It is crazy that we get to do this as our job. We get paid to go into a recording studio and record all this amazing stuff, and it is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of kind of experimentation, exploration, and a lot of play.
That's
in the booth, which is so fun. Exploring the character, exploring the text, and then when you get to do the Waller, like the emotes and things, that can also be really fun. That can be really hard, pretty rough on the voice at times, but it's a lot of fun when you don't have any texts and you're literally kind of just responding. That can be a lot.
Just like that. I love that moment because often, we might go in for an hour, we might do 4 hours, we might do the day. It depends on the level of text. But by that point in the session, you've done the hard graft, like you've done the long, complicated lines that took 10 takes. And it's great because by that point, you really can let rip. And so often they want, a couple of different takes, and it's, you got to, and they'll give you a quick description of what you're looking at, because you'll give it one pitch and they're like, no, it's way bigger than that. And if we're lucky, you might see like a tiny bit of visual. They might give you a bit of visual, and you're like, oh, okay, it's epic. It's not like me in a little room. It's great fun. And it's such a privilege, because I know there's so many people that would love to do what we do and they just don't get the chance. So sometimes I feel like we're kind of doing it for everyone else, who doesn't get to do it. Because I've had plenty of years of unemployment. I know what it's like. And I think it's a privilege. It's a real privilege getting to walk into that studio, and they're a great team. Like the team, we've worked with several directors over the years, but they are absolutely consistently brilliant, and they're so knowledgeable, and they know way more than we do, so we just enjoy being in their kind of presence, because they're great as well. So that's
because there's the lore person, then there's the dialogue, then there's the director, and then there's the writer, right? Is it the three people that are usually on the other end of the booth
normally? Sometimes support in our ear from Japan as well sometimes.
Yeah, it's cool to like be in a place where you're like, what's this? How do we pronounce that? What do we say? What happened here? And then they just like kind of rattle something off, and you're like, oh, okay. Where do you have that in your notes? Okay.
Yeah, it's so impressive. Like they know the game inside out. Like all the politics, all of the everything that happens. I mean, it is quite impressive.
It's like a separate world for them. No questions. Just want to let them know the twins are great, and they both delivered a fantastic performance.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
As an MMO, Final Fantasy XIV has this ongoing serialized production to it. Under these circumstances, I'm curious to what degree, if any, the English VAs have a relationship with the localization or writing staff. Is it primarily here's the line and go from on high, or have there ever been a chance to connect with the devs about your characters or lines?
That is a good question. Yeah, I would say it's pretty kind of separate, which I would like to change, actually. I would love to be able to discuss the character and the journey with Yoshi P.
I do feel like I'm getting braver in studio. If something, because of course there's 10 ways to say every single line, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. Some are really very, very clear what is required of us. But I don't know. I'm getting a bit more confident with. Sometimes I'll just say, well, what about, because I'm often told to be more wry. The note for me is largely wry. Just be more wry, more cheeky.
More wry.
More nasty, more cutting. But I am getting a bit braver with giving them an alt or asking if I can give an alt with a slightly different, just a bit more Ali in it. And it doesn't mean that I certainly don't know any better, but I know that it's nice to kind of begin to play with that, because they trust me now and I trust them. And I think that, we certainly don't start rewriting lines in the studio. That doesn't happen. But I do feel like that there's a real dialogue between the team. Like I know with I Am Not Alphinaud, which has become quite well known. I'm often asked to sort of quote it at people. And I know that line was rewritten a couple of times, like Morgan had a chat about it and he was like, do you know what? I reckon she'd be pretty fun. She'd be pretty cross about that. So there's definitely dialogue. And our job essentially when we go in is to do our job and be voice actors. But I love it whenever that's permitted, that kind of play between you and the booth is great. I mean, why not?
The last time I was in, I had a line to Estinian. Then I had the idea of doing something, giving it a bit of a different flavor. Now, knowing just how much people enjoy the relationship between Alphinaud and Estinian. And so, increasingly, I think we are finding our voice, our confidence in suggesting different takes on things, aren't we? As we get to know the characters even better.
Well, and the best of all worlds is that they franken take, they mix and match the one that your alt and a little bit of the first one, and then you've got the perfect, nothing, can't complain about that. Were there any lines that they received that made them, I don't know if you remember, but that made them go, what the heck is going on in this story?
Oh, loads.
All the time.
Those ones were like, and you come in and you think you've got your head around it, and then they give you like one line of context, and you're like, oh, okay. The C is fragmented. We very, very rarely, like we might get a bit more of the script these days, but largely what we get given is out of sequence, and that's as it should be, because they don't necessarily want us knowing the entire story. We've got to really trust the guys in the booth. Like that's what I mean about, sometimes we'll do a line and they'll go, great, move on, and you're thinking, what? But we've got to trust them because they know that we've delivered it in the way it should be delivered.
And also because we only record, I mean, it sounds very obvious, but we only record our own lines, which means that we often don't get the full scene that we're a part of. We only get the cue line. And so quite often we're like, what's going on? What's happening? Who am I? Where am I?
You really have no clue, right?
Yeah. So we are kind of in the dark about a lot of stuff, which is a relief that we can, trust the director and the devs that it's all in place and that we'll be kind of like shepherded in the right direction.
I think we're getting braver with, now I know you. Now I actually know. I know you quite well. We do speak every day, pretty much. I do feel like now, I know it's hard, like we understand this as singers and voice actors, that it's not just it's not just the line that you say. It's the breath before, it's the breath after, it's everything in between. And I feel like now I think we're both getting better at giving our lines context with bodily energy. Like, if you were to say a line to me, I could easily now, it wouldn't be in the text, but I might go, oh, and then say my line, because why not? You would, you've made her cross. So they would, and I think it's that's the stuff that gives the text life. And I think we're both getting a little bit more playful with that now. I know Alphinaud better, whereas I spent years not really knowing much about Alphinaud because I never saw his lines. But now they'll play me a bit of Colin in if he's been in before me. And it's ace because I can bounce off the back of it.
There are some actors I know that will like just start running because the way that the lines are, and they're just like panting. And I'm like, I'm just going to read what's on the screen. It's weird. It's interesting to hear you say that, like, knowing each other and feeling more confident to be able to add these sort of ad libs or, breath, which is such a normal part of our normal existence.
I know. You just feel really watched and really under the microscope, don't you? And that's our skill, isn't it? Is to be able to, well, how would I respond? And that's why sometimes they say to me, they're like, just relax or go hell for leather. If it's a battle seat, run. And I do run. Do you run? I run on the spot quite a lot just to kind of make myself sound a bit more in my body, because otherwise it just sounds like it's coming from here.
Yeah, that's it. And that's why I always ask, especially if there's kind of speeches and stuff, well, with any line really, is like, where am I? And like, how big is the room? Am I outdoors? Because that's going to require a different voice for each context. And so like knowing kind of how to pitch it, because if you are in like this vast landscape and the person that you're talking to is really far away.
Yeah, projection range, yeah.
Exactly. But then if like that close to you, that's obviously going to require a different approach. We do have to ask those kinds of questions. When we do get to do kind of like time syncs to the video, that's awesome. Love doing that, because it's an extra bit of help, isn't it, to kind of deliver those lines.
3 beeps is such a funny skill to learn, like knowing when to come in, and like when you take your breath on the 3rd beat and then you just like you launch in. It's such a fascinating thing. I mean,
I don't know if people know about that. Like, I only learned about it through this game. I had never had to do that before. So it's a really technical skill to be able to nail it, and also nail it but not sound weird, like act like you normally would.
Emotion, dubbing is hard. I mean, it's not. It's like it's helpful because you see what, especially when you're like I find, maybe because of my singing background, but like matching pitch to, like, if it's a Japanese voice, it's sometimes easier because you can like see the inflection. But yeah, it's a funny challenge to like beep 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 and say the line. It's a crazy thing. Okay, you probably don't have an opinion on this, but which expansion do you like better? Either which they liked to act for the most, or if they play the game. Does one come to mind?
Yeah, well, I enjoyed Endwalker the most because I felt like that went in.
There's a lot to chew on.
Really kind of juicy stuff to get our teeth into.
I think it's probably going to change over the years. We've realised this over the years that our paths have been quite different. Like they're coming back together in, different ways, and it's mirroring in life now. But yeah, I felt like I sort of cut my teeth a bit more in Stormblood, and I think Endwalker, it's all began to feel a bit more real, and I think that's because of our relationship now in real life. We're working together more, and we're like touring together and jumping on planes together, and I think it's really having an impact on how I see the game. But yeah, I suspect that answer will change over the years.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's crazy. And I'm just so excited for both of you. I mean, it's been such a mesmerizing and wonderful experience for me to, as a lifelong Final Fantasy fan, to really dive into Final Fantasy XIV and experience it as an adult and have it be this like nostalgia bomb, but also this really, really well thought out and interesting and unique story. I mean, 500 hours is sort of abnormal for me for any game, but like a bit of a virtual tourist. But so Final Fantasy XIV in a lot of ways as a game feels like home for me. So I mean, I'm just so excited for both of you for Dawntrail, but also just to see where we go and where things continue, and hopefully Dawntrail was a little bit more relaxing compared to Endwalker, and a little bit of a it seems like a very fun, I'm sure there'll be twists and turns, but hopefully it was a more relaxed adventure for both of you. Thank you both, Beth and Colin, for coming on and just talking with about the deep stuff, the good stuff, the acting stuff, the Final Fantasy stuff. And yeah, I'm glad that we made this work. I know we've been trying to do this for nigh on a year at this point, but I'm so grateful that it panned out, and just thank you both for spending the time with me today. So thanks a ton.
Thanks so much, Marco. It's been great.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this entire video, and we'll see you all later. Bye, everybody. See you.
Bye.